Good afternoon. My name is Joyce Cox, and I am the Senior Manager of the Office of Neighborhood Engagement under the Division of Housing and Community Development. I must say, we have had a tremendous day, but now we're at the final hour. Our final session is about the Black wealth gap and its impact on Memphis neighborhoods. And as we all know, our neighborhoods are the very fabric and the essence of our community. The challenges that our neighborhoods are faced with, they're just not germane to Memphis. However, I could talk about this all day. But with no further ado, we would like to welcome this opportunity for our two amazing expert speakers to engage in a riveting conversation surrounding one of America's most entrenched problems, the growing Black wealth gap. First, let me take this opportunity and introduce our amazing, Honorable Jim Strickland. He's the mayor of this great city. Mayor Strickland was sworn in as mayor on of Memphis, for his second term on January 1st, 2020, with a continued pledge to reinvest in our neighborhoods, our citizens, and to keep growing our economy. Mayor Strickland is a 1982 graduate of the Christian Brothers High School, a 1986 graduate of the University of Memphis, and a 1989 graduate of the School of Law in the University of Memphis. Go Tigers! He practiced law at Glankler Brown, PLLC from 1990 to 1998, when he began practicing at Kustoff and Strickland, PLLC, where he remained until he became mayor. Mayor Strickland was elected to the Memphis City Council in 2007 and served as its chairman in 2014. In 8 years representing District 5, then Councilman Strickland became known for fighting for government, transparency, and public safety. Mayor Strickland is married and has 2 children. Welcome, Mayor Strickland. Our next speaker is Dr. Andre Perry, who's a fellow in the Metropolitan Policy Program at Brookings, a scholar in resident at American University. He is the author of the new book, Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities, which is currently available wherever books are sold. A nationally known and respected commentator on race, structural inequality, and education. Perry is a regular contributor to MSNBC and has been published by the New York Times, The Nation, The Washington Post, TheRoot.com, and CNN.com. Perry has also made appearances on CNN, PBS, National Public Radio, NBC, and ABC. A native of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Perry earned his PhD in education policy and leadership from the University of Maryland, College Park. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Perry, who will give us a presentation, and then we'll buckle your seat belts, and let's get ready for a conversation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And it's always a pleasure to be home. Every time I go down to Memphis, people like Rashawn and others treat me like family. So I consider Memphis part of my extended family network. So thank you for having me. I'm going to jump right into it because the wealth gap is very important to me. Many of you know that the wealth gap is about 170,000 for white median wealth, meaning assets minus debts, compared to 17,000 for Black folk. And that number has widened. That gap has widened over the course of the last 20 years. So I wanted to investigate why. And one of the reasons why we let me see this. We have this widening gap is because of housing itself. So I'm going to go through a deck that focuses on housing, the worthy of investment, the devaluation of assets in Black communities. And you can find a lot of this material in my new book, Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black City. Go get it. At the Brookings Institution, I look at Black majority cities. Of course, Memphis is one of them, but there are 1,200 throughout the United States. All of them have assets that are worthy of investment. But here, when it comes to housing, I want to show you something. This is a chart that looks at the home prices by neighborhood. So if you look on that x-axis, you'll see the percent of Black people in zip code. So the concentration of Black people in a neighborhood. And on the y-axis is indicated on top of the bar is the home prices on average in those places. So you can see as the concentration of Blackness in the neighborhood increases, the home prices decrease. Homes in areas where the share of the Black population is less than 1% on average are listed at about $340,000. And in areas where the share of the Black population is greater than 50%, those homes are priced about half as much, about $184,000. Now, a lot of people will say that's because of education, that's because of crime. But those are things that you can control for in a study. And that's exactly what I did, me and my colleagues did. We looked at that absolute price difference between Black neighborhoods and white neighborhoods, essentially. But we controlled for structural characteristics, meaning we looked for homes of similar size, similar rooms, same number of rooms, all the structural aspect of the home. We wanted to get an apples to apples comparison between those homes. But we also controlled for neighborhood amenities. So we controlled for education, crime, walkability, all those fancy Zillow metrics. So we could get an apples to apples comparison between homes in Black neighborhoods of similar educational levels, similar crime levels, and compare them to their equivalents in white neighborhoods. So the only difference we're looking at is the composition of the neighborhood. And what we found pretty much astounds that homes in Black neighborhoods are underpriced by 23%, about $48,000 per home. Cumulatively, that's about $156 billion in lost equity. Now, this is occurring all through the United States. Wherever you see a magenta circle, that's where devaluation is occurring. Wherever you see a green circle, that's where homes in Black neighborhoods are priced higher than their white counterparts. Memphis, there's a 22% difference, about $24,000 per home. And I'll put this in and let you see some other cities. Lynchburg, Virginia, 81% difference. Rochester, 65. Jacksonville, 47% different. Detroit, 37% difference. Nashville, across the way, actually homes are in Black neighborhoods are priced higher than their white counterparts. Wichita Falls, plus 16%. Boston, Massachusetts, plus 23. But I just want to be clear, Boston and Nashville are no less racist than Memphis, but home prices are certainly different. But I just want to put this $156 billion in perspective because it's a big number. Obviously, this number is robbing municipalities of resources because municipalities use the home prices to base their tax revenue on. So it's robbing municipalities of millions of dollars to go towards education, infrastructure, policing, all those different services. But it's also robbing individuals of wealth. In fact, $156 billion would have financed more than 4 million Black-owned businesses based on the average amount Black people use to start up their firms. It would have paid for more than 8 million four-year degrees based on the average amount of a four-year degree. It would have replaced the pipes in Flint, Michigan 3,000 times over, covered all of Hurricane Katrina damage, and has doubled the annual economic burden of the opioid crisis. It's a big number. This is why I say all the time, wherever I go, there's nothing wrong with Black people that ending racism can't solve. Too often we blame Black folks for the conditions and in Black neighborhoods and cities. Now, and that's just a white supremacist myth that those conditions are caused by the behaviors of people. As you could see, when you control for those individual behavior type of things, you still get a difference. And I'm not saying education doesn't matter. I'm not saying that crime doesn't matter. But it's when we look at Black neighborhoods, it's almost like we're saying there's twice as much crime than there actually is. The education is a lot worse than it actually is. But the point here is we need to stop blaming Black people and start looking at policy. I'm going to show you a clip from me testifying on Capitol Hill. This is Representative Al Green of Texas, and he asked us a basic question. Do you believe there's discrimination when it comes to home prices and housing? Now, if there's any one area where we have lots of evidence of discrimination, is housing. But take a listen to this, and I'm testifying with the members of the appraisal community. Take a look and listen.
If you think Black people are being discriminated when their property is being appraised, would you kindly raise your hand? One person on the panel. If you think that, for fear that I'm not communicating well, if you think that Black people are not being discriminated against when their property is being appraised, if you think they're not being discriminated against, kindly raise your hand. Okay, hands now. We're getting some consternation, I see.
You know, after this hearing, people came up to me, the people who raised their hand, they said they did not discriminate. They didn't break any laws. But we got to be clear. You don't have to break a law to discriminate. Most of the history of housing in America was predicated on legal segregation. And so many of the practices, policies, procedures that we currently have there's racism baked in. And so we need to extract those racist practices, those vestiges of segregation, even in the legal practices and procedures. But I want to talk about another aspect of this, because when you're talking about wealth in the country, there are two areas in which Black people make most of their wealth. When you look at people who have wealth, it comes in two areas: housing and business. Now, housing obviously connected to business, and I'll show you why. You can find many of the data in this report right here. But I just want to throw some stats at you. Black people represent about 13% of the population, but only 2% of the nation's employer businesses, meaning businesses with more than one employee. Only 1% of business owners were able to obtain a loan in their founding year, compared to 7% of white entrepreneurs. Black entrepreneurs are denied bank loans more than twice as often as their white peers. And when we do get loans, we get higher interest rates. And during the last recession, about half of Black businesses survived the Great Recession, compared to 60% of white-owned firms. And we know that number might get worse because of the PPP loan fiasco. 95% of Black businesses, when it was rolled out, did not receive the subsidy that was supposed to go to everyone. But again, the reason why people say, oh, there's a lack of investment, is because of quality. The businesses aren't as good. The services aren't as good. So I wanted to interrogate that as well. Well, you know, so we much like the housing, instead of home prices, we looked at business revenue. We got that from Dun and Bradstreet. And then we scraped all the Yelp data from businesses across the country to get a sense of quality. Yelp and other consumer rating services are great resources to determine quality. Lots of research that say these are valid measures. And then we control for neighborhood conditions. Again, we controlled for education, consumer spending power, a lot of the neighborhood conditions, because we want to get an apples to apples comparison between businesses. And what we found may surprise some, but not me. Black, brown, and Asian-owned businesses are rated just as high, if not higher, on Yelp. So if you don't control for the business type, Black, brown, and Asian businesses in Black communities, in Black neighborhoods, score higher on Yelp. But when you control for the business type, it's even between white businesses. So it's essentially the same. But the blacker the neighborhood, the fewer the stars, and the lower rating. And I'll explain in the next slide. So if you see that magenta line, those are Black, brown, and Asian businesses. The gray line is white businesses. And so again, Black, brown, Asian businesses score higher. But as the businesses, as the communities get blacker, the scores go down. So and not only the scores go down, but the number of hits, the number of ratings go down. And this is because largely is people are avoiding Black neighborhoods, not because of the quality of the business, but because of the perception of the neighborhood. And this is costing high quality businesses about $4 billion a year, $4 billion, just because of the perception in the neighborhood. Now, I'm going to say this, but if you're from a Black neighborhood, you've heard this before. Our ice is just as cold. That the elders knew that if you bypass quality in the hood, you distort the market in ways that forces quality businesses to compete with lower quality businesses, and you suppress economic mobility in those neighborhoods. So when we construct all these entrepreneurial programs and business programs, we need to stop putting Black people in these capacity building programs. This is not about quality. Now, again, Black businesses are rated just as high as white businesses. This is about investment. Nothing grows without investment. So if you want to see growth in housing, if you want to see growth in businesses, which are instrumental in wealth building, you have to invest in these quality assets. Now, there's things that we can do. As I round out this conversation, we have to invest in people. And let's be clear, if you invest in place and not people, you encourage displacement. You'll raise property values, and people can't keep pace with those rising values. And there's a lot of talk about affordable housing, and let's be clear, it can never be affordable housing if people can't get adequate pay. If pay continues to stagnate, you can build all the affordable housing you want, people won't be able to access it. So we can't just focus on the inanimate objects. We have to invest in actual people, meaning direct capital towards future business owners, future homeowners. We need, and I'll talk a little bit about this later, about an opportunity I have for all of you. But I'm going to say we continue, but we need to remove unnecessary bureaucratic barriers. Again, Black business owners, Black potential homeowners don't need another class. They need investment. Cut the check. But with that said, you still have to invest in place. You need to target infrastructure, because one of the harms of devaluation is there's less money to actually help develop the streets, to help fix the lights, to do the beautification projects. And individuals don't have the money to fix their facades. And we also need incentives to encourage businesses to operate in Black neighborhoods. Now, I'm just going to mention one thing before I close here is in that upper left-hand corner, I'm going to introduce in sometime after the election, probably towards the end of November, an opportunity for folks in Memphis and others around the country. We're going to have a competition of sorts, a challenge, where we're going to give away $1 million of prize money to organizations and firms who are working on the issue of devaluation. If you have solutions, please join this challenge. You'll be working with entrepreneurs from around the the country working on this issue. And it might be you can develop new loan products. Particularly in Memphis, there are thousands of properties that are priced at a level that banks won't back. And therefore, we need new mortgage products so that low income renters can purchase those properties. We need new credit scoring systems. That was mentioned in one of the videos I saw. So if you have solutions there, please put those forth. So we'll be announcing that challenge competition. And the goal here is we need people who are proximate to the problem. We don't want another solution from a think tank here or Capitol Hill. We need people who are in the thick to deal with these issues. So again, a lot of this can be found in my book, Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black City. And I'm looking forward to this wonderful conversation with Mayor Strickland. But again, thank you for the opportunity to come back home to Memphis. And I'm looking forward to connecting with you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Perry.
Hey.
And put a plug in. I've got my copy. I have to admit, I've only got myself 25% through the book, but it's a great read. I really appreciate you challenging your reader to think about issues differently, particularly me. And I learned a lot, and I really look forward to finishing the book.
Very good. Thank you. Now you and my mother have a copy. That's a good thing.
Well, between that book and your presentation, I have so many questions. I want us to discuss before we end today, home ownership.
Yes.
Quality, affordable rental property, and then business ownership. And from reading your book, I really want to focus, and you mentioned it earlier, policy. You want, I think rightly so, say, let's focus on the policy. When I took office in 2016, Memphis, like many cities, and in fact, I think it sounds similar to your hometown.
Yes.
Where we had a loss of population. People moved out, and our population, well, your hometown population went down. Memphis stayed kind of static, only because Memphis kept annexing areas and growing in geographic size.
That's right.
But people were moving out. So that left a lot of vacant property, way too much. So when we came in office, we thought, well, let's figure out if we can give a tax incentive like we do for businesses. You bring your business here, you pay a little bit lower taxes because you create so many jobs. Let's do that in the home ownership side. Through our state constitution, and the lawyer said it wasn't really practical to do. So what we did instead was down payment assistance. And I guess that qualifies for cutting a check.
Yeah.
And that's been successful. It's limited by the amount of money that we have. But I wondered if you know of what else can we do, particularly local and state governments, to help people with African Americans in particular with home ownership?
Well, in places like Memphis, you're really talking about a place-based sort of policy structure. You don't have to target Black people in Memphis because the concentration of Black people is so high. With that said, we still do need ways to get money in the hands of people who have been injured by discrimination of the past. Now, many of the reasons why people were able to move out so readily is because of policy. There were, we won't talk about the highway systems, the other discriminatory policies from the 30s to the 80s, particularly hitting home in Memphis, that enabled white people to move to other places, robbing municipalities of that wealth. And still to this day, we incentivize retail shops, other businesses to to cite themselves in the metro area, not in the core, the inner city core. But I think you did a lot of right things there, that you ultimately do have to put money in hand. Remember how we got out of the Depression? We gave people low interest housing loans, and we gave them down payment assistance. We just didn't give it to Black and brown people. And so for me, I mean, that is the right thing. And we also need to figure out ways to give, and this is something I'm writing about now, actual land to people. You know, land is about power in this country. And throughout the United States, we've essentially taken land from Black people and did not allow people to have land. So we need to do that. In addition, I am absolutely clear. There are some things a local municipality can do. We still need the support of the federal government. I think what you're seeing in Memphis, I actually am impressed with the community development organizations, the good work of several people doing great things. But, you know, and not to minimize what they're doing, but you're talking about a couple hundred homes, you know, 400 here, maybe 300 here. You know, it just doesn't meet the need. At some point, you need the infusion of the federal government. And so I would say, hey, keep having these demonstrations of sorts, your local leaders. But when the time comes, when an administration is ready to highlight some of these demonstrations, you need to put those people forth and say, hey, we have some ideas, we have some strategies. Here's the capital. But and one other thing I will say, we need to highlight the commercial corridors that can help generate revenue. There are places, and I know this, I've looked at Memphis a couple times. There are a few commercial corridors or ones that can be developed that are adjacent to some of the great housing developments that are occurring all across the United States and across Memphis. The reason why I say that, a lot of people build out commercial corridors and without any kind of comprehensive housing policy. You build a commercial corridor out and without adjacent housing policy, you'll push people out. You'll displace people ultimately. So for me, again, we got to invest in people. We got to figure out low interest business loans. We have to zone differently. That is one thing municipalities can do. Many of the single family housing zones that were essentially built to segregate, we need to change those. So that's how I respond to that. But you're doing some good things, but we need to get bigger. We need to get bolder, and that comes from more resources. And so hopefully, maybe in the near future, the federal government can support what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree with you. We definitely need the federal government's partnership. As a side note, and I don't know if it's been discussed today, but there are certain grants from the federal government that are based on your housing stock and the age of your housing stock. So a city like Detroit, which has basically the same population that we do, 650, 670,000, they get twice as much federal grant money than we do, simply because their housing stock is older, which maybe they deserve some more money, but we're trying to level that playing field in Washington. One thing that got me thinking, you said our laws and our policies allowed people to move out of the cities and encouraged them. One that you may not know about, actually, in Memphis, not only did we pave the roads out like your book talked about, I forgot what city you were talking about in there, but we actually extended our sewers out beyond our borders and allowed people to take advantage of that infrastructure, which is a huge cost and a huge benefit. And we put an end to that. We're not extending our sewers outside our limits anymore. And I'm happy about that. But I want to follow up when you talked about commercial areas that we could help. And this was on your screen. You said what we could do is invest in some infrastructure improvements around that. We have a plan called Memphis 3.0, which is our first comprehensive plan in Memphis in 40 years, and has identified and talked about that same issue. But what were you talking about when you said we could invest in infrastructure?
Yeah, you know, and again, infrastructure, the reason why people want infrastructure, because you get a big bang for your buck on this. Infrastructure projects are some of the few projects where you can put hammer in hand to low-skilled residents. And so the building of the infrastructure can help create income and wealth, but ultimately you're supporting the places in which people live. And in places like Memphis, I can't say this enough, you need infrastructure improvements. But this is what I always say this. A lot of people will jump to infrastructure. A lot of people will jump to brick and mortar and other things and forget about the people. You've chiefly got to figure out ways to involve people so that they are benefiting from start to finish these projects. Because too often these projects land in communities and they say, here, look what we gave to you. And when you look at the planners, when you look at the construction, when you look at the supplier diversity issues, Black people were not involved at all. And so every step of the way, we have got to take advantage of these infrastructure improvements because not only do they deal with the sewage and the pipes and the streets and the roads and transportation and the like, and provide those services and goods, they are also wonderful employment opportunities and contracting opportunities. You know, because Black people, most of us didn't have someone we didn't inherit wealth. You eventually have to establish wealth by taking on large-scale projects, taking low interest loans, taking on a mortgage. This is how Black people build wealth. So in all of these opportunities, we can build wealth in Black communities, but we have got to have regulations and rules that force us to invest in people. And that's what the mistake I see all the time. Folks want to either import talent or they want to just develop something for the people. No, the folks in your communities, that's the source of strength. Those are quote unquote the assets. That's where you invest and build your infrastructure from there.
I think one thing to make you happy is the Memphis 3.0 plan. It was based on what neighbors wanted. 15,000 Memphians took part, and they said, how do you envision your neighborhood to look like? And that's, nobody knows their neighborhood better than the people who live there. Yeah. So let's take it next step. And you touched on this earlier. And Memphis really has not had this problem yet because we haven't had the growth that a Nashville has had. An area grows, it becomes the hot area all of a sudden, and then the people who'd lived there before are sort of priced out.
Yeah.
And how do you prevent that from happening?
Well, and this is where it gets really tough, because when you're talking about wages and benefits, we can do an accounting of every business, and city governments included, and look how many people, how many working poor do you have working for you? And this is where we need to really have clear eyes that, and like I said, you can have all the affordable housing, you can have programs designed for low income residents, but if wages don't increase, you know, it's going to be hard. And so we need to have a serious conversation about wages, you know, and this is why I've always been a staunch supporter of municipal services, everything from city hall to schools, also the post office. These we know that people, Black people's wages are generally higher in public goods and public services, largely because of labor, because of civil service, because of a lot of things. Those are the standards we need in our private sector as well. And so it's a challenge, and municipal leaders need to step forward and say, hey, we need a serious conversation about wages in our cities, because it is throttling growth and stability in our communities.
Yeah, we haven't, for instance, minimum wage. We have not had a minimum wage increase in our state in maybe a couple decades. I mean, it's been that long. And we are prohibited by state law from creating one in our municipal city limits. I
will say that we need to question, why is that? Except for, obviously, management wants those resources. It costs to raise wages, but these gaps in wealth are partially a result of hoarding at the top. So at some point, something has to give, because we want governments to have the tax base so that they can provide the services and provide the infrastructure. But if you don't have wages going up, you're handcuffed.
And I do think that's one striking difference in this election next week.
Oh yeah,
on that issue, and change could be coming with regard to that.
Well, I will say that we know what we're getting now. It's unlikely there will be changes if the current administration stays on. And I'm not saying that in a partisan way. That's just that philosophy. And right. So we need a change in that regard.
All right. We talked. You talked about the two ways to build wealth, and I totally agree with you. Home ownership, which is what most people do, and then business ownership. Our data in Memphis on Black-owned business is, in a way, worse than the data you put up. I think, if my memory is right from seeing your slide. There was a great man in Memphis named Fred Davis, and he was on our local city council for about 16 years. He had an insurance agency, and about 25 years ago at a Kiwanis meeting, he said, Jim, if you added up all the business transacted in Memphis, not just city government, but all of us going to the grocery store and all that, he said, how much do you think is spent with Black-owned business? And I said, I don't know. He goes, 1%.
Yeah.
And our city now is at least probably around 65% African American. And when I got elected mayor, we talked, and he said, Jim, remember that number I told you 20 years ago? He said, it hadn't changed at all. It's still 1%. So he has been an inspiration to a whole movement in Memphis, at least in city government, where we have an ordinance that we follow that gives some preference to minority-owned and women-owned businesses, MWBEs. Yeah. When we took office, 12% of our contracts went to MWBEs. Now it's 22 or 23%, which is a huge improvement, but not nearly good enough. So I'm proud of the progress we've made. I'm optimistic that we're going to keep moving that number up and up and up. We have a good team that's doing it. But we got to go beyond city government.
Yeah, absolutely.
Private business has to do it. What can we do to get private business bought into this concept that the public sector is leading on?
I would say in places like Memphis, you got to at least get 15% of your sole proprietorships, those where there's only one employee in the business, and to try to get them to increase at least one employee. And for businesses with at least 3 or 4, you want to try to double that. And that means targeting the fields that can meet the supplier diversity demands of not just municipal governments, but private companies as well. So we need to get many people qualified. We need to invest in those businesses because they're not going to grow unless you see investment. And so with all the corporations making these billions of dollars available, I've been saying this, and I think the good folks of Memphis will agree. We should not just have these corporations spread this money around like peanut butter. We should have targeted investments in occupations and sectors that are ripe for growth. Now, that might sound mean to say, because a lot of businesses need money at this time, need investment. But we should be identifying the businesses that are ripe for growth in high growth areas. And that means targeting your investments in those businesses. So, and I've been to Memphis several times. I know the folks in tech. I know the folks in healthcare. I know the folks in other service industries that are in high demand. And so we got to be very clear-eyed and say, let's maximize this opportunity and really focus on growth in that area.
Thank you. I've gotten a message through the machine here. It says I'm talking too much and I need to let other people ask questions. So I don't know how I turn it over to somebody to do that.
Oh, often local governments take criticism on programs such as pilots. How can these use? Oh, yeah. You know what? It's interesting. Pilots without a real plan to scale up are insulting. Like you should have a real plan to scale up. The pilot should be based upon something. So there
may be a misunderstanding.
Okay.
Pilots are what we call our tax incentives.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that's where we offer the property tax incentives to recruit businesses.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, those things are needed. I mean, it should be a whole suite of things. So tax incentives without, capital, like direct capital going to business, you need all of that bundle of services, because if you do one without the other, it's still going to be tough. And so you can't just incentivize people with sort of, non-existent sort of, or things that are currently there. You eventually need to put checks in hand of people in some way, shape, or form. And it might be a low interest loan. It might be a grant. But you do need these incentives, but you obviously need direct investment.
I will say that most of the companies we give pilots to are going to invest, are going to build a structure of some sort. And we do put MWBE requirements on that construction. So for construction in Memphis, the requirements somewhere in the 30 to 40% range, and they hit it. So, but these other things you talked about, we could explore too.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because cities all across the country are doing everything to recruit companies, and those companies are coming in, and it's not increasing wages for the folks in them. So we got to rethink. Maybe those incentives could be better used by putting cash in hand of local entrepreneurs. I mean, it is really a dilemma, because every mayor wants to bring something that is going to hire a company that's going to hire people. But oftentimes they hire from the outside and not locally, which doesn't help your situation. So, you got to play this wonderful. I wish mayors played their own gambit instead of the Amazon thing, that mayors rallied together, say, we're all going to have a floor here, that this is what is required to come to our city. And this is how it's going to benefit local residents. And that's the games mayors need to play with companies moving forward.
Yeah, I often say, if I were king of the world, I'd do away with all tax incentives, because now I will say we only incentivize livable wage jobs, which includes benefits. And it is tough, as you said, it's a balancing act, because if you don't offer that tax incentive, Nashville, Birmingham, Louisville.
Yeah.
They're going to do it, and it's tough out there. I saw Paul Young pop in and then pop out. I didn't know if he had a question.
Hello, gentlemen. You guys are doing such a great job. I just decided I would get on out of there. But thank you
I think you
all.
wanted to show off that nice suit you got on.
You know, I had to be clean today. I had to look good for the people. I want to thank you all for this great discussion and this great dialogue. I think that the public, based on the comments, are getting a lot out of it. I just wanted to help bring some more questions that we're getting from some of the people that are viewing. So I'm going to ask some of these, and some of these actually are for both of you. So feel free to just chime in with whoever feels the spirit. But this one is directed to you, Andre. So in your research, Memphis has experienced the most significant form of white flight than any other Black majority city. What policies could address such large-scale disinvestment? So what policies do you think are on the horizon for Black cities that are experiencing this type of disinvestment in the communities?
Well, okay, but this is what's interesting. You know, you're seeing in some cities all across the country incentives now to recruit people back to the city. And and I keep saying, hey, invest in the people who stayed. We like to think that people in the city core could not leave. And maybe some of that is true because of the racism outside in the suburbs or in certain neighborhoods, and it's just too onerous for folks to go there. But people love Memphis. I mean, it is the heart and soul of families. It's the something about the place. And at some point, you got to reward the people who stayed. And too often, where I see these incentives, and this is coming all over the place, efforts to recruit people back from the suburbs to the city core. And we're not going to, essentially, in this regard, we're not going to gentrify our way to success in that regard. At some point, we got to invest in people. I'll say this, and I said it during the presentation, nothing grows without investment. If we really want to see Memphis blossom, we've got to find ways to invest in potential homeowners, potential business owners, current home and business owners. And we've got to find the resources to really expand and develop the commercial corridors and neighborhoods. And if you don't have the resources to do all of them, which most people don't, and this is where it gets a little contentious, and people don't like me to say this all the time, you got to pick a few. You got to say, hey, this is the neighborhood that's going to kick it off. This is the commercial corridor that we're going to invest in. We're going to dedicate resources to. And so my thing is we've got to try to invest in the people who are there. And when we do, you're going to see growth.
Great, thank you. Mayor, you have any thoughts on that in terms of city strategies?
Let me talk about the bigger issue first. Population loss, I've often talked about, is a major challenge for Memphis. For at least 50 years, we've lost population. And as the question asked, certainly it started as white flight in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s. And then it grew beyond that, where both Black and whites were moving out of the city. And I'll quantify it for you. Between 1980 and 2010, that 30-year period of time, and remember, we're 650,000 population, 110,000 people moved out of Memphis. The reason I know that is because we annexed areas during that 30-year period of time that contained 110,000 people. But our population in 1980 was 650,000, and in 2010, 650,000. So if during that period we annexed 110,000 people, but we had zero net growth, that means 110,000 people moved out. That's significant. And in my opinion, no business can sustain that kind of loss of customers. No church can sustain that loss, many members. But I do agree with Dr. Perry. We have to invest in our people here. And this is a real simplistic view of it, but invest here, improve the quality of life so others want to be a part of it.
That's right.
They will move in. Now that's how we do that is a longer conversation.
Right. Thank you, gentlemen, for those responses. You know, oftentimes when we are doing this work in communities, I'll go to just name a neighborhood in the city, and I've been there, and one of the things that I often hear is that there are various resources that neighborhoods need and want, things like grocery stores. And one of the responses that I give, and it's the unfortunate reality, is that it's very rare that the city is going to decide that there needs to be a grocery store in an area and a grocery store shows up, because in many instances we need private partners to come in and co-invest with us to bring those much needed resources to communities. And so it's really a balance of figuring out how can you bring public investment and pair it with the private investment that's severely needed. And so, Dr. Perry, I wanted to ask this question for you. What things are you seeing nationwide where cities are able to bring those types of assets to various neighborhoods? We've had some success locally when one of our large grocers pulled out in 2 neighborhoods in the city. We worked with some community groups and some private partners, the Work CDC and some other for-profit businesses, and we had a little bit of success. But there are so many other neighborhoods that need that same level of success. So I'd love to hear from you on how you bring that type of asset to a community.
Oh man, but what's interesting, for the first time in my lifetime, I'm 50 years old, I've never seen as much private investment in racial justice ever in my life. And so one of the things I keep saying, though, this is going to run out, and it's going to run out quickly.
Another question.
And so we've got to figure out ways to target the money into the needs of community. The reason why I'm big on commercial corridors is because it gives us an opportunity to do 2 things. It gives us an opportunity to address neighborhood needs. And so we need grocery stores. We need barbershops. We need these neighborhood consumer-facing businesses. But we also need to invest in high growth industries in the same place. So we need to invest in the tech sector. We need to invest in healthcare sector and in other high growth industry. And we need to do it strategically in places that will accelerate growth in the neighborhood. And so when these companies are saying, hey, we're giving billions of dollars, peel off $1 million or 2 for to pair with public investment, because we know that this is going to go away. Eventually, government needs to kick in and sustain it. But I want to see private investment targeted to needs in ways that municipal, state, and federal government can get their back, so it can be sustained. Because we know come December, we're going to be asking, where did those billions go? And in many cases, we won't have anything to show for it. And in every state, there's a number of companies that we need to say, did you address a need? Did you build a grocery store? Did you invest in that high tech and that high growth tech company? And was it in that one area in Memphis? I mean, and that's the kind of accountability that we need to hold these companies to. We again, I say this all the time. I don't want charity. I want investment. And when you invest in people strategically, you'll get the kind of growth and services people deserve.
Well, let me follow up on that. There's one area of infrastructure that the government's going to have to lead on, in my opinion, or maybe there's many, but the one I'm thinking of right now is broadband.
Yeah, absolutely.
To do the things you say, Dr. Perry, we need the internet high-speed internet across the city. And if we leave it only to the private sector to do it, they're going to only provide to the wealthier areas, basically. They'll do some other areas, but to really get it across the 300 square miles of Memphis, we are going to have to take the lead. And Paul is actually leading our team on this very issue. It's an extraordinary cost, well beyond anything I ever thought it would be, but it's something that we're going to have to do. Paul, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mentioned it in an earlier session. I think that the internet is just as essential as sewer and other utilities. You cannot survive in this 21st century economy without having access to the internet. And so I think as a city, we have to be smart and strategic about how we bring those services. In some areas, it may be trying to connect large multifamily developments to city-owned utilities, or it may be partnering with a Comcast or AT&T, working with the private sector. In some areas, it may be bringing Wi-Fi to different parks or other public assets. But one way or another, we have to figure out a solution, because I think COVID is exposing that this is definitely one of the areas where many of our citizens are going to end up falling behind if we don't address it.
Hey, and one of the public-private partnerships we see around broadband is in education. You do see some private companies stepping up to provide broadband access to students in schools, but we need to figure out a way to maybe make some of the local universities and schools as internet hubs for entire communities, expanding the E-rate program so that more resources are poured into these services in ways that make broadband accessible. If you're building a new project or development and folks can't have free access to the internet or subsidized access to the internet, something's wrong. And we still build these facilities, housing developments, commercial corridors, and there should be in the package broadband access for the local residents. So we got to figure out ways to slowly but surely build that public infrastructure, including broadband.
Absolutely. I think we have another question from the audience. How can those involved with appraising change their algorithms and tables to better value the properties held by people of color? And I'll expand that to those properties that are in the neighborhoods that are filled with people of color. How can we address that issue, Dr. Peggy?
Now, I don't know if folks are aware that the appraisal industry is getting hit hard. There were a bunch of high-profile news stories. Obviously, a lot of my work points to home prices, and appraisers are the explicit service that prices homes. And so they are under assault, and many times rightfully so. The New York Times had that painful story of a Black wife and a white husband who got their home appraised. The appraisal came in low, so they removed all the blackness from the home. So they removed all the Black pictures, the Black books, all the imagery, all those different things. And they got a second appraisal, and it came back $130,000 higher when they removed the Blackness from the home. Now, something's wrong. And so certainly we need to diversify the field. Last count, 85% of appraisers are white. That may help, but again, it's in the practice. Many of the price comparison models essentially recycles discrimination. So many of the neighborhoods that they base the comparison on have also suffered from discrimination. So you're just recycling previous discrimination, and nothing ever changes. In addition, many appraisals are don't treat the home improvements in Black neighborhoods the same way they treat home improvements in white neighborhoods. We know that's at fault. But I'm also leery of automated valuing systems, so using AI, because if you have bias in the programmers, you're going to get the same results. And so, but this is the hard part. You can't wave a magic wand and say, let's increase home prices, because you would price out people in the neighborhoods. So that's why we need, one of the reasons why I said we're having this challenge, because we're looking for innovative solutions to this issue. But appraisals are a part of it, but we also must look at lending. We also must look at real estate agent behavior. So there's a lot to examine here, but there is concrete things we can do to stop this clear racism that is occurring in appraisals. Holding people accountable. I mean, I often say, I'm always looking at innovative solutions, but at some point you got to hold people accountable. That $130,000 difference, that license should be taken away. I mean, that's raw. That is theft. When you're taking $130,000 off somebody's house, that's college, that's business. That you're robbing people of an opportunity. So for me, that is theft at the highest level.
That's great. Mayor, go ahead.
No, I wasn't going to say anything. I'm glad you asked the question, because that's I don't know anything. I don't know much about appraisals and the way they do it, but the way Dr. Perry said it out there, part of holding things accountable or somehow publishing your metrics or your results. The way government is always held accountable is we put out dashboards and we talk about our MWBE spend, or what the crime levels are, or how many roads we've paved and where we've paved it. The private sector is not quite as transparent, so it's just tougher there.
Exactly.
So we have one.
Let me just add, the Business Roundtable, for those who don't know, it's a group of some of the tops. They're the largest, the CEOs of the largest companies in America. They've pledged to be transparent with their data. Just recently, they pledged to invest in Black communities, and we got to hold them accountable to that, because you're right. So it's a lot easier to hold public institutions accountable. But again, we're not going to just nonprofit our way out of this. That eventually we need private industry to step up and hold themselves accountable and allow the public to understand what they're doing.
Thank you for that. So I happen to be on the board of our local HBCU, Lemoyne-Owen College, and we have a question from the audience. How can HBCUs help address affordable housing and wealth gap challenges in communities across the country? Throw that one to you, Dr. Gary.
Oh man, remember, let me tell you, college saved my life. For many, if you read the book, you'll know that my father was murdered in prison. I was informally adopted by an older woman in the hood, Elsie Boyd, I call her mom. And she raised about a dozen kids from the community for different durations. And when it was time for me to go to college, it was time for me to leave that house. And if it wasn't for housing at the college level, I don't know what I would have done. And so one of the immediate things colleges can do, particularly residential institutions, they need to provide or prioritize housing for low wealth individuals. And they need to discount that housing appropriately. And they need to make that housing available in summer months and during other breaks. In addition, we need to build developments around HBCUs. Now, one of the things cities can do, city councils certainly can do this. They can increase density and affordability in zones because remember, cities are still some of the largest landowners, if not the largest landowner in places. So we can zone for affordability and density, and we need to change up some of these single family housing zones because many HBCUs are located nearby neighborhoods like that, and we need to figure out ways to increase housing near and around HBCUs.
And I'll address that specifically with Lemoyne-Owen. As you know, we have at least two groups out there who want to put a TIF, tax increment financing area, around Lemoyne-Owen. And I think the area needs it, and they're both good people, good groups. I think Lemoyne-Owen needs to be instrumental in that discussion, whether that's leading the effort or partnering with the effort. And then side by side with that, I think the University of Memphis, as an example, has done a really good job of taking the lead in economic development and maybe even neighborhood development around their campus. I think, and I'm not saying that's not going on at Lemoyne-Owen, but I think we could do even more to make them the linchpin of that effort. And we're starting to see success around the University of Memphis on it. And I think that same model could apply there.
Absolutely. That's certainly a hot topic in the city of Memphis, is around that South Memphis TIF.
Hey, did you notice how I sidestepped which proposal's the better one?
I didn't notice it. I didn't notice it at all.
No, but let me. This is where you always double down on assets. HBCUs are tremendous assets. One of the studies I did was looking at the incomes of places that have HBCUs. They're generally higher than places without them. That's true of all colleges and universities, but we know that the places around colleges and universities actually shield people from recession. One of the reasons why is one of the few places you can, like workers at all levels, from the professors to the cafeteria workers, they're getting decent benefits. I mean, not always, but decent benefits, decent services, access to educational services. So it shields people from recession. So the goal is to build with the colleges and universities because they are proven assets, strong assets that we need to build upon.
All right, I think we have one more question that we are going to address. If we can get it up on the screen. If not, then I'll just come up with my own question. All right, I think I may have to come up with my own question. So both of you gentlemen, if you could, we're coming towards the end of this session, and we've had great dialogue both in the Hop In platform, on Facebook and on YouTube. It's been an amazing day of conversation. After events like this, people always want to go to action. And so I'd just like for both of you to just give us your comments on what some next actions we can take as a community to address this wealth gap in our city and in our country, quite frankly.
Well, I'm going to say, be clear. I meet people like Rashawn all day long in Memphis, and we need to find ways to get those projects some capital. There are people doing it in Memphis, and they don't get enough. And I'm, and I get frustrated when I go to cities, particularly places like Memphis, and I find the people who are doing the good work, being innovative, going outside the city limits to get capital. And that has to stop, because Memphis is not wanting for wealth. It's not wanting for wealth and capital. It's wanting for empathy, love, and understanding the opportunity in investing in Black people. Again, nobody wants charity. We want investment. And so for me, it's about investing in the assets that we know are proven, that are doing it every day, that understand that our ice is cold. And we need to see people in Memphis getting the love. So I'm going to leave it there, but because people in Memphis know who's a credit, who's an asset, who know their price. And we need to continue to elevate those people as much as possible. And there's lots of people I want to name in Memphis, but we need to keep uplifting those folks who are doing the good work and just simply not getting a love. But eventually people are going to recognize that if we truly want to lift Memphis, we have to start with the people who are doing the good work.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to do, we have incredible CDC partners in Memphis. Rashawn is just one of them. And thank goodness for them, Paul. Their partnership with us and their leadership has been invaluable. And Paul, you and your team have done incredible work. So to the investments that Dr. Perry was talking about, city government, we got to step up and do something with broadband and monetizing Memphis 3.0, investing in the people and the infrastructure in those neighborhoods. We got to figure out a way to come up with the money, even though it's not plentiful. And then lastly, we got to go to DC and if we're 30,000 or 40,000 units short, which I believe, it's well beyond our capabilities. So we have to, as Dr. Perry said, we've got to get the federal government to be our partner on that, lead partner on that, and really come through with significant resources.
Amazing session. I want to thank you all for your time and effort and energy and insights. I could not appreciate more of the comments that you said. There's so many great things that are happening in the city of Memphis, but our challenge now is to take it to scale. We have great partners. You mentioned Roshan. We had videos all throughout the day highlighting different investments and projects, and those are just some of the stories. Part of what we wanted to achieve today is to share those stories, but we also wanted to inform. There is so much dialogue on Hop-In. You gentlemen would be amazed at all of the conversation. And there's one comment that Dr. Monique Tate has said throughout the day, and I just wanted to acknowledge it because as we've talked about racial and social equity, one of the comments that she kept making, and I agree with this point and I echo it, is that this is now a human rights issue. This is an issue about people. And so if we want our community to thrive, then we have to ensure that all of the people in our community have an opportunity to advance. Housing is a core issue to that. Obviously, it plays out on education, transportation, workforce development. All of these things are so interrelated. So we're talking about one of the anchor pieces of the puzzle, but it's an important one altogether. So as we close today, I'd like to thank you, Mayor, for taking time out of your schedule and engaging in this discussion. Thank you, Dr. Perry, for your time. Thank you for all of the attendees that have stuck with us. A couple of you have been there all throughout the day. Yes, right. Know your price. Go out and buy it. It's available online. Dr. Perry is a great guy, a great friend to Memphis. We look forward to having you back to talk to us more often. I'm also wearing two hats right now. I want to acknowledge my role as chair of the ULI Memphis board, who is co-hosting this session. So shout out to all of the ULI Memphis partners, and thank you all for participating. And lastly, I want to thank the HCD team. They've been under a tremendous amount of stress putting together this event. So I want to thank them for all of their time and energy. I want to also thank Optimum Studios. We've been here in the studio, and we've been putting a lot of pressure on Monroe, but he stepped up to the plate. So if anybody is looking at hosting an event on Hop-In, please give Monroe Ballard a call at Optimum Studio. Great minority vendor in our community. Neighborhood Preservation Inc. and Pigeon Roost produced the videos that you saw today. They did an excellent job, and we will make those videos available in the coming days, as well as all of these sessions. I want to thank National League of Cities, Tennessee Housing Development Agency, and all of the partners that worked with us throughout today. This is going to bring our event to a close. So all of you all, I'd just like to ask that you have a great day, and let's continue this dialogue. We'll play a couple of our videos as we close, just so you can see them. If you didn't get a chance to see them earlier, we'll play all of them in succession. So we'll keep the live stream going for a little while. But thank you, and you all have a great evening.